It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. And welcome to the early 2026 as we're putting things out in Her Success Story in whole new ways. We're expanding our platform. We're expanding how we do things because to me, I'm never done learning, which is one of the great things about Her Success Story because I get to meet wonderful people, learn wonderful things from really interesting people. And today I have just that person for you. Brittany Stevens is a partner at Phillips and Associates. They are focused on sexual harassment and workplace discrimination. They are based in New York City. And Brittany, you can expand if there's further than I should know there. But she has dedicated her legal profession very much for the deep belief in justice, respect, and for protection for those with less power in the workplace. Having been in the workplace for a very long time, worked for people early in my years, as well as having had people work for me for the last 30 some odd years. I take this as very, very important conversation and information from a very intimate and great close relationship. So thanks, Brittany, for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to, share some knowledge with everyone.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you, as an early stage lawyer, when you were an early stage lawyer, what drove you to move in this direction as a career?
I'm going to take it one step earlier, right? So I come from a family of lawyers, right? Both my parents were lawyers. So, it's always really been something I was interested in. Our dinner time conversations were sometimes like centered around like justice or the law or just like new laws that were coming into effect. So when I went to law school, which just seems like a normal thing for me to do. I had a professor, an employment discrimination professor, kind of just was one of those electives. I just said, you know what, this sounds interesting. Let me try this. And I was like immediately drawn. I knew that was probably what I wanted to do. It felt very right. This professor, sometimes it just takes like one professor as well to just move the needle for you. I knew that it was something where I can help people, which was very important to me.
Nice.
I knew that if I were to work for, either a plaintiff or a defense, I wanted to be on the plaintiff side. I knew I wanted to be the one bringing.
You wanted to work for the people.
I wanted to work for the people.
So I'm going to guess you're a pretty strong people person.
I'm a very strong people person. I think if I wasn't a lawyer, I would have been like a therapist or someone who would like sit down with people and talk about things.
Right.
It goes with like my strengths. And, I really then just sought out internships, jobs where I can like really focus on employment discrimination after that. And that's what I did.
You're a partner now, you are, so that's the professional side, but you're also a working mom with two young kids. Before we went live, we were talking about like what's circulating this winter in health and, from colds to flus to stomach viruses and the whole thing. So you're also living this life of navigating what is the life development, meaning a family and building a family and being there. And you stand so much up for, I know you're part of your core beliefs, as you've shared with me, is pregnancy discrimination and care. We talked about caring for our parents, unfortunately prior to them passing. And we've both been in those shoes. So what do you see out there and how do you guide people around this? Because there's some tough decisions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I do a lot of pregnancy discrimination work, right? And there's often this notion that, women who get pregnant, that they will be like less effective, they will be like less productive, right? So really trying to like break that perception and that barrier because I am now, I have two young children, right? Like my two young children make me a better lawyer in many ways, right? Like I know how to triage things a little bit, better. I'm able to manage my time, right? Because when I get home, I want to be with my kids. So, it's really about breaking that stereotype that, you can't really be a mom and also like have like this high powered job where you are, in the courtroom and working, very, very long, difficult hours, right? Because like, yes, you have to kind of balance things to some degree, but
Mhm.
that's what life is. And that's what my clients are dealing with every day, right? Like they're dealing with needing accommodations after they take maternity leave, right? To maybe like breastfeed and have a place that they can do that in their, in their office or, wherever they're
And a
working.
refrigerator to store breast milk. That
Exactly.
might not be the common refrigerator that everybody's going into, like something. I like just
Right.
thinking about it.
And it shouldn't be, right? They should have, and these are all things that I dealt with firsthand, right? I remember
Yeah.
when I got back from leave and I had to tell my boss, I need a refrigerator, right? Like I need blinds on my glass office, right? Like these are things that, I needed. And it's nice kind of being in that shoe as well, where you're the person that is like asking for these things. And then you can kind of, understand where your clients are coming from a little bit better as well.
Right. And, when we look at the pregnancy thing, we've also both been through, unfortunately, aging and ill parents. And I don't know if that's written into the handbook. I'll be honest with you. I'm being completely transparent here. Like, where does that get written in, being that caregiver that we sometimes have so many things we're navigating? It's, the sandwich generation is a very, very broad based generation.
Right. No, I mean it's a very real problem. A lot of people are getting older, right? There's the children that are having to take care of, their parents and their loved ones. And companies offer like bereavement or certain, there's certain things that they offer, but depending on what state you live in, there may be some kind of protections for time off to care for a loved one if you are a caregiver. As a personal story, my mother passed away 4 years ago, and I had to take time off before that to care for her. I needed to be able to attend her doctor's appointments. I needed to
Right.
be able to like visit her in the hospital. And so I did take a leave. And, I want people to know that this is a protection that people should be having. They should be having conversations with their human resources department to kind of figure out what kind of leaves or accommodations they may need for this, because you are offered protection, right? There is protection that will offer this.
And, honest to goodness, it's not easy. My mom passed a little over a year ago, and the navigating of time, sometimes it was as simple as your family members alternating between doctor's appointments,
Yes.
but then also wherever the other person was, we would just do a phone call in so everybody can hear, but you had to have that quiet time and quiet space to do that. And I don't think when we started building, and this is men and women, when we started planning what is business structure, we never really thought about that.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that finding a company or a place that you work for that really supports people who need to take some kind of protected leave, whether it's a disability leave, caring for a loved one, maternity, paternity, right? I mean, it's so important to find a place that, not only offers these protections, which are, mandated by the law in many ways, but also that, they offer a safe place that when people return from their leaves, they won't fear retaliation. They won't fear
Right.
like I will be losing my job or I will be passed over for that job that I worked so hard for. So, it's important to kind of like build a reputation within the company that you will protect these employees.
In your career journey, what has surprised you?
What has surprised me? I think what surprises me is that despite how far, we can even just use women, like, right, women have come through the
Yeah.
last, since the 70s, or even how much further we still have to go, right? Like
Well, forget
sometimes
the 70s. I'm going to tell you, I had my kids in the early 90s.
right.
And it was a boys club. It was, women, it's like, oh, I was told point blank by peers and friends that I could not be a good mom if I owned a business.
Right. Right.
And that wasn't the 70s, that was the 90s. And
Mhm.
that wasn't all that long ago.
And those conversations are still sometimes happening today, right? I mean, it's the same thing. What we see a lot now is, since COVID, a lot of people went to like a hybrid or a fully remote job, right? And now companies are mandating their employees to go back into
in the office.
right?
Right.
And, people can debate all day about what's good, what's bad about that. But like what is definitely happening is that we are seeing a lot more women now have to leave the workplace again because of these mandates to go back into the office, right? Because of juggling childcare. Whereas before, things were a little bit easier for them. So, yes, this is still a conversation that's happening today.
And, as things, I'll always say, we need to be in conversation, because it's out of conversation that we have evolution.
Right.
You know, that we have things that truly evolve, that we have new places we land at and new compromises.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And that's why it's so important to talk about these things, right? Because we need to be the voice for people.
So, in talking about it, let me ask you this. Any tips or advice, as I'd say women, but I'm going to say women and men, because we're dealing about paternity as well as maternity. We're dealing about leave for taking care of our families, or accommodations for that. What, as people are navigating their careers, what are some of the things they should be aware of or be looking at?
Well, there's so many things to be said about that, right? I think really if you're trying to just find a company or a place to even land at, I think like knowing companies' policies and procedures surrounding these accommodations, these leaves is very important, right? Because, companies that offer, let's say, like paid maternity, paid paternity, there could be, right? And this is not always the case, but like they could be more open and, more helpful to certain employees, as opposed to like certain companies that just say, no, we don't pay any kind of like, maternity or paternity. You just have to take like what the state offers, right? And then sometimes we see, okay, is there like a deeper thing at that company, right? Like maybe they don't treat working women or working men as well, right? So I think just kind of figuring out before you start working at this place, like what are their policies? What how are they treating employees?
Yeah. And I think that's their policies and their culture.
Exactly. Right.
And so let me ask you this, as a working mom, what tips do you have in navigating life with a lot of responsibility in a lot of areas? You're a partner in a firm, you have 2 kids, you're not preaching, you're living.
Right. Yes, I feel very lucky, right, that I get to do all of that, right? But a lot of it is, you're kind of always like triaging, right? Like what is like the most important thing to tackle at that moment and that, at that point of time. Sometimes, you have a really busy day at work, you have to be at court, but then you get a call saying, your kid is sick at school and, trying to like, find people who can kind of step in and help is very, very important. But, you know, you just
Build
kind
the
of
support system is one of the things I'm hearing you say.
build a support system. And, I'm lucky to have a little bit of flexibility. So like, I can work from home if like, my daughter is sick that day. So finding a place that kind of really like fits within your needs.
I like it. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for joining me here today on Her Success Story. And may 2026 bring you the joy and fulfillment from business and life. May all, and I say this to all of our, to our listeners as well, as we're stepping into the new year. Step into it with a big, big, giant step of pure joy and fulfillment of who we are. But Brittany, truly, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, this is what I say at this point in the show. Take a deep breath in. Oh, I'm so excited to take my deep breath. I think I started when I was still talking. Here's what I'm going to say. Identify one takeaway from the conversation, what Brittany and I chatted about, and then make a decision and the one action you're going to do. Here's my suggestion, every week you jump into her success story, jump in with the intention of the one takeaway, the one aha that motivates you to action, that keeps you moving forward in your career, your life, your business, however that sets up for you. Thank you for joining us for the early shows of 2026, and we'll see you soon.